hard and she'll ever know. I love her to skin and bones are thrown, sticks and stones, just to let you validate your message to
We are back. Welcome. Away Days is back in business. And welcome everyone to Loaded Mag NUFC. And myself and Chris are going to bring you something a little bit different. We talked about it in our last show last night when we did our Q&A with all things Newcastle United. Battleground Europe, something a little bit different. Now, we believe that the 5 clubs that are on tonight are the closest to breaking that mold and breaking that traditional, so it seems, top 6. Some have already done it and are planning to do it again, and some are maybe coming out from under a rock and potentially going to spoil the party. So the best way to do that is get everyone around a table or around a screen. Now, I have to be honest, for you that are watching, behind the scenes before we went live, already sparks flying with some clubs already and some choice words being said. So it could prove to be a little bit of a tasty one. But Chris, how are you feeling about this unique show?
I'm really looking forward to it, Pete. You know, you broached the idea a few weeks back, and you know, I said I thought it'd be a fantastic show. Really looking forward to speaking to the guests we've got on tonight. Some of them I've met, some of them I haven't. And as you know, Pete, I love football in general. So I love talking about all different clubs, and speaking with fans as passionate as us is can only be a good thing. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm interested to see the views of other fans. And pleasingly, Pete, we're outnumbering them a little bit tonight, so there's 2 Newcastle fans on tonight, so I'm quite happy with that.
Definitely. But look, they can definitely hold their own, and we're not going to mess around, so we'll get them in. So first and foremost, Leicester, till I die. Chris is a representative. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, and thank you very much for having me on this show and thinking that we can still qualify for Europe.
We'll definitely talk about it, that's for sure, Chris. We've got little Dan in the house from WolvesFanCast. How you doing?
Hi guys, nice to be on. I'll just reiterate, Chris, just thanks for the invite. I'm just here for the vibes tonight.
We can tell. We've already heard it in the background. We love it. So great to have you on the show. And we've got a couple that are making their reappearances along with Chris from Leicester. We've got Rich from Villa Pod. How you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, boys. Again, thanks for the invite. Very hopeful. I think you guys are a bit more hopeful than me about Villa finishing in Europe, judging by this episode. And also interesting that you haven't got a Man United fan on, so maybe that's a sign for the season upcoming.
Interested, very, very interested.
Just a quick one, Pete. Remember that gap.
Don't worry.
Mind the gap, Rich. Mind the gap.
Don't worry, I'm watching it.
As I said, the sparks have already been flying, so we're going to bring in the main man, Dan Lawless from West Ham Fans TV. How you doing?
Doing good, mate. Doing good. Looking forward to the show. You know, I've been doing a lot of these shows with these like greedy 6 clubs, but you know, you end up getting bored of all their waffles. So it's good to, you know what I mean? Come on here with some proper clubs. You know, some proper clubs. Talk about proper football. Do you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I'm excited.
Good stuff. Great to have you all on. And look, little Dan, I did mention I would make sure there was a gap between you and Rich, so I have to make sure that Dan's in the middle to keep that gap nice.
Hold me
nice
back.
and tasty. Yeah, exactly. That is for sure. Now, as we've said, we got you guys on because maybe the media, maybe as in general from Loaded Mag NUFC feel that these 5 clubs are the ones that have been talked about the most in terms of breaking into Europe. As I've said, 1 or 2, and Dan will get into West Ham in a second. I've already been in and around the mix for a couple of seasons now, but we are those clubs that outside that traditional scene, top 6, we are those clubs that are looking at maybe breaking that mold. Now, look, I want to start with Aston Villa. So, Rich, I'm come to you. Obviously, you brought Gerrard in the back end of last season. You've had some ups, some downs, but you have spent a little bit of money. You are, improving with some talented players, and we'll look at them in a second. But in general, how are you assessing your pre-season and looking forward to the season ahead? What are your expectations from yourself?
Yeah, I mean, from a results perspective, and it's always a funny one, isn't it? Like you try not to get carried away or read too much into preseason, and everyone says, we don't care about preseason, we don't look into it. But when you've won every game apart from one, and that was a draw, you kind of you can't help but get a little bit excited about it. So in terms of results wise, it's been really good, really positive. We've beaten obviously the local friendly against Walsall. We've beaten Leeds, we've beaten Stade Rennes, and we've beaten Brisbane Roar, and we drew with Man United. So from that perspective, it's been good. However, there has been the same signs that we're still lacking where we lacked last season. Like Ollie Watkins and Danny Ings haven't really hit the ground running in pre-season. And while we've signed Boubacar Kamara in central midfield, who seems like an excellent player, we still seem, in my opinion, very lightweight in terms of our midfield. And I think that's going to be a real issue for us next season. 1 or 2 of the signings have looked really good. As I said, Kamara and Diego Carlos have looked really good. And Leon Bailey has been absolutely phenomenal in pre-season. So that's a real positive sign. So yeah, I think there's some, in terms of expectations for the coming season, I think we can be positive. And you guys will all say the same thing. If you can get off to that good start, if you can get a little bit of momentum, you never know what's going to happen. And I hope that with Gerrard having a full preseason with the players, he can maybe bring about that little bit of steely determination that he obviously has, and that's something that we've lacked, that little bit of a soft underbelly. So hopefully he can rectify that and shit house a few wins, for want of a better word, which we've never been able to do properly as Aston Villa for the last 3 or 4 years. So yeah, fairly positive going into the season.
Excellent. Chris H, I'll come to you. Rich has talked about the Villa business. I'll put it on the screen there. We can look at the ins and the outs. You've talked about the likes of Coutinho, Kamara, Diego Carlos. There's a little bit of money been spent there, 1 or 2 decent deals. Ludwig Augustisson, if I'm pronouncing that right, is coming on loan from Seville. Are you worried about Aston Villa from the business that they've done?
I don't want to sound like I'm being disrespectful here, but I wouldn't say I'm worried about Aston Villa. But I do think that Aston Villa have made some good signings, like obviously getting Coutinho on a permanent deal. For 17 million, considering what did Barcelona pay 140 odd for him. I think that's a fantastic bit of business. Boubacar Kamara, someone that Newcastle were linked with for a fair while, as was Diego Carlos. But I think Villa have made some really good signings. Obviously, they're gonna really miss Matty Target. And I say that tongue in cheek. I know they've got Luca Dean in there, who seemingly has slotted in reasonably well. But Villa are a good side. Like whenever we come up against Aston Villa, I always think we're in for the game. I never take it for granted that we're just going to turn up and roll them over, so to speak. But I suppose my only concern, and maybe it's a question for Rich, is that a lot of these signings are going to be on really, really high wages, and not to sound like like the FFP police or anything like that, but Rich, from your perspective, was there any concern in terms of these players coming in? I know Gerrard's probably wanting to put his own stamp on the team, and I completely get that. And these players that he's brought in are certainly improvements from my point of view, anyway. Look from the outside looking in, but were you concerned at all? That when these players that you brought in were on seemingly very, very high wages, and do you expect more outgoings? I know you've got a big load of outgoings there, Rich, but do you think there'll be any more?
Well, breaking news. I don't know if you guys knew about it before the pod, but Carney Chukwuemeka's just gone to Chelsea for 20 million.
Wow.
So from an FFP perspective, that is great business. So we've obviously Grealish was pure profit for 100 million because he came through our academy. And then Chukwuemeka, I'd imagine, is a significant amount of profit because he's been with our academy for a number of years. Yeah. So I think from an FFP point of view, Purslow, I believe, is part of the body that wrote the rules for FFP. So if there's anyone who knows how to get around it, it'll be Christian Purslow. So yeah, I'm not too concerned. I guess the only thing that I think I would hope that Gerrard's maybe, because the business was done early, and obviously we signed one or two players in the January window, and also the fact that Danny Ings and Leon Bailey had such up and down seasons across last season, that with a full pre-season, I'm hoping that those players kind of pick up, and hit the ground running. As sometimes it takes players a season or whatever to get settled in. So I'm hoping that that's the case. As I said before, the only thing that I'm worried about is the physicality in our team. Like we've got Diego Carlos, who's a man mountain, and we've got obviously Konsa, Mings, or Callum Chambers, who are pretty big as well. But from a height perspective, I'm not particularly happy about our strike force or our midfield. We've got a really good young player called Tim Irigbonham, who's absolutely phenomenal, age 18, who was part of the England Euro under-19s winning squad. And I actually think he's a better prospect than Carney Chukwuemeka. He's 6'2". He's much stronger, and I think he's going to play a big part this season. We've obviously got Jacob Ramsey as well, who burst onto the scene a lot last season, who's only 21. And then we've got Cameron Archer, who Gerrard is keeping. So the academy is fantastic. And if that can bring through some players or we can sell them on for the likes of 20 million, then that obviously frees up money to buy, big name, one or two big name players. But yeah, I'm not concerned from an FFP perspective, but I am hoping that he brings one or two more players in just to address, or just to give us those options of a plan B. If you need to lump it up forward, you guys have got it with, you've got Callum Wilson, who's fantastic, but you've also got that potential option with a Chris Wood when it's 10 minutes to go and you just need to lump the ball forward. Like Villa haven't got that, and that's kind of what we're missing.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's interesting. I want to get the thoughts of the other clubs now. Look, Chris, I'll come to you. From a Leicester perspective, obviously, I know there's a little bit of a rivalry there, just a little bit with Aston Villa. Is there, what are your thoughts about Villa? Do you think that they are in a position to really push for Europe, or are they ones that, are maybe just going to fall a little bit short in terms of making that push into your European spot? What do you think?
It'd be interesting because so many clubs, I mean, Wolves last season, for example, started really well and then fell away. Brighton started well and fell away. We didn't start well and just never got going. But I think Villa, they've got some good owners in. I've heard their owner or the representative talk on the radio. He seems to be very sensible. He's not trying to run before he can walk. Gerrard, great signing for a manager, and I think it's going to be an interesting season for them, because this is the one where they've got to make the statement. This is the one where if Gerrard doesn't get you a top half finish, people are going to start questioning his ability to do it in the English leagues. We've got a manager that won everything in Scotland. It means, we could all go and manage Rangers and Celtic, and let's be honest with you, and win a trophy up there. So I think it's a very important season for Villa. and it's going to be interesting because there's so many clubs now that are trying to get into those European places, and everybody sort of, apart from us, is growing the squad. I would have to say they'd probably be one of those I think will actually possibly sneak into it.
Yeah, it's interesting. But I want to come to a team that had that run and were definitely in the conversation for a lot of that season. Little Dan, I'll come to you from a Wolves perspective. Are you of the mindset that you've got enough to withstand some of those signings that Villa have signed in this summer? Do you think your team is better equipped to keep Villa at bay, or do you think that Villa are looking strong?
I mean, it's clear to see that they've invested money, but I'll be truthful with you, with Pete. Same guy like myself, backwards cap on, middle aged. You know what the truth is? They're not in our league. They haven't been in our league for a good few years now. Did they finish how many points last season was he, Rich? 7 points, and we lost 9 out of the last 14. I mean, we're fine. Wolves are literally 2 players away. We're 2 players away from a top 6 finish, and we're 2 players away from a relegation battle if 2 get injured. That's the tightrope that Wolves are on at the moment, because how thin our squad is. We literally, it can go one way or another this season. Wolves have got to bring in a striker if Jimenez is going to be out for the majority of August. Fabio Silva's been let go out on loan to Anderlecht for the season. We haven't got a focal point striker. The last sort of few pre-season games, we've been playing a false 9. Leeds away, first game of the season. It's not the type of game that you want to a degree, because obviously Leeds at home, first game of the season, their fans are going to be right at it. They're not going to want to get off to a defeat in the first game of the season, so they're going to come out the traps just straight away. I'm just hoping that, as good as we have been on the counter-attack the last few seasons, with an extra man in a final third, because we're transitioning into a back 4, that we can be a lot more competitive, because the lack of goals last season really killed us. We were in the race for top 4 come the end of January. We let Adama Traore go out on loan. We didn't replace him. We didn't strengthen the squad at all. And our owners are really culpable for the way we finished last season, because Bruno Lage, they've really not given him a chance. Last summer, he asked for 4 players to be in his starting lineup. He got 1. He's had another starting 11 signing since then. That's 2. So he's missing 2 from what he originally wanted, and you've lost another 15 players this summer. We're so threadbare squad-wise, and we never really had depth when Nuno was there. It's going to be an interesting season for Wolves, but I still think that even though Villa have spent that much, I still think we might just edge them this season. It's going to be close. I don't think we'll do the double over Villa this season, but
I like that Aït-Nouri. He looks good.
Unreal. He won't be at Wolves in 2 seasons' time.
Yeah, he looks a good player.
Yeah,
he'll go for 50 million plus in a couple of seasons. He needs to, because Angers have got a sell-on clause with him. So we need to try and get as much money as we can. And our Man City, I think Real Madrid and Barcelona have all been tabloid links. So, but I mean, he is an exceptional player. If he doesn't, I made a joke about a year ago that he'll go and win a Ballon d'Or in a few years. But I'll guarantee you on whatever I need to guarantee on tonight, he'll be France's left back for a good few years to come.
Wow.
Was it just me, or did anybody else hear all the violins then?
Oh, don't start, Chris. Little Dad's already on one tonight. He's already on one tonight. Don't start. But look, Dan, Lawless, you're the man we haven't come to yet. And the reason being is because obviously you, West Ham, were that team and have been for a couple of years now that have broke the mold and have been within that top 6 conversation for most parts of both seasons. So, from your perspective, looking down on the rest of us, are you worried about Villa? Oh, I think you're on mute, mate.
Out of all the clubs here, I wouldn't say that Villa are one of the ones I'm particularly worried about. I'm really interested to see more of Gerrard. I think there's still some question marks over him. Obviously, they've spent a lot of money in the past few years. Haven't gone as crazy this summer, it seems, as they have in the past. But, yeah, like like Rich said, that the positive is that they have got a pre-season, like Gerrard has got. So this is the season to really judge him. They did have some poor decisions. I think there was the second half of the season last year. So now's the time where he gets his pre-season in, starts to get his players in, more of his players in. Then we can judge him. But I can't, if I was to predict, I can't say that they're going to be the team that would snatch like a European place for us. But I think they should be aiming for top 8. I think if they was to get top 10, I think if they was to get 10th even, I think that would be poor for what they're trying to do. And I think, Gerrard coming in now, he needs to try and push them at least around those places, at least this season, to try and compete, to look and say, okay, it was in touching distance. So if they do finish 8th or 9th, they can sort of look and take something from that. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But yeah, at the moment, as things stand, I don't know. I can't see him pushing on that much or sort of drastically.
I want to put a question out to all of you, and obviously, Rich, I want to hear your opinions on this as a Villa fan. Is Steven Gerrard under pressure this season? And the reason why I say that is because, we came in and had a blistering start as manager at Aston Villa, but then things seem to kind of dip towards the end of the season. And, I did see on social media, obviously a small section that were questioning Steven Gerrard towards the end of that season. Now, do we as a panel think that Gerrard's under a little bit of pressure, or do we think he's going to get given that time to really build at Aston Villa? Can they afford for that to happen? Rich, I'll get your thoughts first.
I mean, every manager is probably 4 or 5 games away, other than like Pep or Klopp, are probably 4 or 5 games away from being under real pressure. If they lose 5 games in a row or something like that, the vultures are circling, aren't they? So in that sense, yes, he is under a little bit of pressure. I agree with everything that the guys have said. He is going to be judged more this season. He's had a full pre-season. He's kind of got the players that he wants in. He's managed to assess all the squad and see who he wants to keep around, who he wants to send out as best as he can. So yeah, he will be under a little bit of pressure. I do still think though that he will get some time. He'll get, if he does go on a one bad run, maybe even 2 bad runs, then I still think that they will stick with him. But as Dan said, a 10th, I think they'll be looking at minimum 10th position, the board. That's an absolute minimum. So yeah, I think somewhere around that top 8 will be deemed a success, and potentially like a bit of a cup run, depending on the draws that we get. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, if he loses 4 or 5 games in a row, he's going to be feeling the heat. Absolutely.
Definitely. Well, what do the rest of the panel think? Does anyone think that Gerrard's under a little bit of pressure, or do you think they're going to allow and fork him a little bit of time? What do we think?
I think it depends for me on where they finish. I mean, they finished 14th last season. If they finish 9th or 10th this season, then you can't get rid of him because you've improved. But will they see that? Because it's Steven Gerrard, because they've spent the money, will they see that as a failure? We know that clubs can get very trigger happy when it comes to getting rid of managers, and they lose 2 or 3 games and they're suddenly under pressure. As I say, from what I've heard from the Villa owners, they do seem to have their head screwed on, and I think they'll stick with him unless it's a really disastrous season, as in, Dean Smith sort of thing, then I think they'll stick with him. And they should do. Because he's going to be a great manager.
I think also, I forgot to mention that the pressure that comes off Twitter and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? You dare to look at Twitter, but it's just a minefield of opinions, and just ridiculous opinions most of the time. But as Villa fans, as all you guys probably know, I'm sure little Dan knows, Villa fans don't need anything to moan about. Like, with the most fair weather supporters that you can possibly imagine. Like, we'll stick with the club, don't get me wrong, but they'll just moan about anything. We could win the league, and there'll still be Villa fans who want to get rid of the manager. They're just Yeah, sometimes
I
it's
did
just
see a few
embarrassing.
start to turn actually, like last season with some of the results to start to question Gerrard. Like already,
Yeah.
funny you say that.
It's just crazy. They're just never satisfied with anything. So,
And that's probably where and with the fan base, when we talk about pressure, it's the pressure from who, the owners or the fans. And the fans, that is where I think a lot of pressure will come. Because, like I said, he had there was a few bad results of Villa last season. There was a bit of sort of voices of discontent. But I think this season, maybe he should be given time as a young manager still. But yeah, I think Villa fans, like for all the time you've been in the Premier League, you was hoping to be up there and starting to challenge for those spots a lot sooner. So I think it's about that. Is that patience going to be afforded just because he's a newer manager? Or is it the fact that you've seen so much sort of money being spent for your club that now's the time? We can't be waiting like 3-4 more seasons. And plus, where there's so many other clubs, in and around them positions that are starting to make those moves, can you afford to be left behind the longer it takes? And when you're going to be trying to compete with, Newcastle, Wolves, West Ham, or Leicester for players, we're all up in these positions, and you're then trying to get the players, and they sort of see, yeah, okay, you were throwing money at it, but you never really got anywhere. I'm going to go with this club. So time is ticking. So I think there's got to be an element of pressure.
I think that's a great way to segue on into our next club. As Dan says, time is ticking. But just before that, there is an issue with the live chat. I think Chris Hall has been calling out Daz from loading.
I felt terrible doing it because everyone's blaming me, and I was like, hang on a minute, it wasn't me.
He's pushed it straight onto Daz. But we've got your comments here. Look, so many in the chat. Simon. Daz is in the chat himself, so he's heard that live and he's read it. Jules, Andrew, David, Ken, Gary, Ray. I could keep going through. There's so many. Jade's in the chat. Welcome, Jade. Lisa, Geordie Toon for life, who's always a regular. Really, really appreciate your contributions. So many in the chat. One of the questions I will ask, though, came from Ken Charlton, and it was a direct one. Quick question here for Little Dan. He's asked, why do they call you Little Dan? Any particular reason?
Because I'm 5'3".
There you go. There you go, Ken.
Simple to the point.
But they call me the Babby Elephant in the pub.
Yes.
There we go. Love it, Dan. Brilliant stuff. So, look, you've mentioned Dan Lawless about time is ticking. This is where I come to you, Chris. Leicester till I die. Leicester City. Time is ticking. Okay, what is going on at Leicester City right now? Let all of our fan bases know that are in the chat. What is the situation with Leicester City? And look, I'll even put it up here. It's not great reading, I've got to be honest. The transfer business in, nothing. Okay, out, a few younger and less established players that have left the club. Total spend 0. Total received 0. What is going on with Leicester, and how do you see your season kind of transpiring with only 4 days to go?
Chris, get your violin out, mate.
Well, speaking as the team, the highest Midlands team, the team for the Midlands that finished the highest in the Premier League last season, I got a sore neck looking down at Wolves and Villa. I've got to be honest with you.
We're from Staffordshire, according to you, Per.
Well, I don't know. You didn't deny it. We haven't let anybody go that I would say was, we wanted to keep. They're just youth players, and Jabokovic, he was our third choice goalkeeper. He came from Hull. I think his main job was just keeping the bench warm for people. And everybody that's gone there is totally, not missable, shall we say. The problem we've had is that we've had a couple of really good seasons. Forgetting the Premier League win, apart from last season, we finished 5th for 2 seasons running. Now, a lot of people say we bottled 4th. Well, we didn't. We did well to get 5th because, we're we're not one of the so-called big six teams. Yes, we're rich, but we're not, oil money funded rich. And we spent a lot of money on players that we can't now get rid of. We have got to be careful of the FFP. We've got players that we are paying an awful lot of money for that are just literally, like I say, bench warmers. You got Hamza Chowdhury, who obviously Newcastle were linked with when you had Steve Bruce. West Brom are linked with him now that they've got Steve Bruce. But would you want to go and play for Steve Bruce? Let's be honest with you. I can't blame him. But if I said to you, right, I've got a new job for you. It's a new department, but you're going to be on $5,000 a year less. You'd tell me to F off, wouldn't you? So we can't get rid of those players, but we've got to be careful that we do not come into, FFP problems. And we don't have to sell. This is the thing. If we kept this squad together, we'd be fine. You know what I mean? But we will sell if somebody comes and makes us an absolutely stupid offer. If you came in and offered 70 million for Maddison, we'd probably say yes, you can have him. But you're pissing about with 35 million here, 40 million there. We know you've got money. You either come in with a serious offer. It's the same with Arsenal and Tielemans. No, we not even had an offer from them yet. And there's going to, it is annoying. And I blame Brendan for a lot of things. Sorry, I don't blame Brendan for a lot of things, but I do blame him for coming out after the friendly and saying, we've got to sell before we can buy. Yeah. He might as well have just put a big sign up that said fire sale. Come and get who you want.
And Chris, just to jump in there, because I think you've made a really good point, and the rest of the panel, feel free to jump in on this. I think this is why Newcastle came back with that second bid. So the first bid was around 35 million going to 40. The second bid, we believe, is around 40 rising to 45. That bid was rejected 2.5 hours ago. It was on Sky Sports News. There is now question marks about whether we come back in with another bid or not. And look, if you ask any Newcastle fan, and we had the show yesterday, myself and Chris, where we asked the case about James Maddison, all Newcastle fans would say 100% we would take him. In my opinion, and I think in Chris's opinion as well as Newcastle fans, I personally believe if we put a bid in around 50 million, rising to 55, I think Leicester take that, because I don't think they're in a position.
I think 60 is the minimum we're talking.
You reckon?
Yeah. He's still got 2 years on his contract.
2 years is not a long time, though.
No, it is not. No, but it's still 2 years. We do not need to sell. We used to be a club, and we've all been there before all these owners started coming out the woodworks, where we had to sell players like Gary Lineker, Alan Smith, just to keep going. That's how we survived. Now, we will sell if we get a decent offer, as in 80 million for Maguire, but we don't have to. And that's the difference, I mean, Darren Bent's come out and actually said today that he would be taking a backward step if he goes to Newcastle United. Now, whether I agree with that or not, I don't know.
Let's put that to the panel. Put that to the panel. What do we think? Just short answers around the table. Start with yourself, Rich, then Dan, then Little Dan. What do you think? Do you think Maddison coming to Newcastle is a backward step, or do you think it's it's kind of a straight shoot, or do you think it's going up? What are your opinions on that?
It's a risk. It's a risky step, because if we're to believe what we're led to believe, that Newcastle are going to end up being where they're going, then it's a forward step. From my perspective, I think it's sort of a sideward step. I think we'll obviously talk about Newcastle, but like, you ended the season strongly, and I think you're going to finish above Leicester. Short answer. So, very minimum, it's a sideward step to me.
Okay,
I would agree. I'd say it has to be classed as a sideward step at the moment, but the clubs seem to be in two different trajectories. As in, if Maddison, it's funny because what happens with the team when like Chris says, Brendan Rodgers says stuff like that, and I wonder whether it's a little bit of self-preservation from Rodgers to kind of back himself out of any responsibility. when players start to leave, they do not want to be the last person left at the bus stop or whatever you want to say, because if Tielemans goes, Schmeichel goes, and Didi goes, Maddison isn't going to want to be left there on his own. There's no way. So he'll want to try and jump out before all the others. So yeah, I think it has to be classed as a sideward step, but both clubs are definitely potentially going in two different directions.
Interesting. Little Dad, what do you think?
Great word, rich trajectory. Trajectory.
Yeah, it's easy for you to say.
Can you see why people from Wolverhampton get frustrated being called Brummies? Have you heard some of the things he comes out with? I don't think it'd be a wise move for James Maddison to go to Newcastle there, because I still think he's got an outside chance of getting in the World Cup squad. Leicester haven't got. You haven't got Europe this season, have you, Chris?
No.
I just wanted to make you remember that. He's still got an outside chance. I think moving.
We want to let somebody else have a go.
That's it. Yeah, we've had our years in Europe, haven't we, Chris? Maybe Villa can get back in there. I mean, it's been 1992, was it?
Don't be silly.
I wasn't even born when Villa were the greatest team in the world, apparently.
See the way they combine there so quick.
only one that's won it on this panel.
Well, no, Little Dan makes a good point there. In it is a World Cup year, and these players, Tielemans, Maddison, Fofana, we're not going to sell all of them. Casper isn't a loss. I've been shouting for him to go this season anyway, because we've got Danny Ward there. We don't even need to go out and buy Dubrovnik. We've been with Dubrovnik from you. We were linked, God help us, with Leno from Arsenal. We do not need to go and buy. If we're that struggling for money, so Schmeichel, get him off the wage bill. He's one of the big earners. Didn't have a good season last season. He's not commanding his box like he used to. Yeah, there's lots of different reasons, but move him on. I mean, we used to have at Leicester a player called Gordon Banks. You may or may not have heard of him. And there was an understudy that went into the chairman's office and said, I want more game time or I'm off. And he said, okay. And he actually got rid of Gordon Banks. And he was replaced with Peter Shilton. Not a bad understudy. He went on to sort of achieve quite a bit. So you've got to let these players go at some point. And I think letting Schmeichel go is a good move, because we've got some great goalkeepers that are coming through the academy that can do the cup games. Ward cost us 12 million. He's played one Premier League game in 3 seasons. It's ridiculous, but he's been great in cup games. But you see, I like Newcastle. And if you're looking at I can't even say that word either. Looking to the future, then yes, obviously Newcastle, with the money behind you, are going to go further than Leicester City. It's obvious. But is it now the right time to move, like Little Dan said? If Fofana goes to Chelsea, will he be starting every week in Chelsea's squad? I doubt it. And we've got the World Cup coming up in November, December, and he could make it into the French squad. Same with Maddison. I don't think he'll make it because Southgate doesn't like him, but same with Maddison in England. So if we are left with the squad we have got, we don't make any more signings, because if you remember a few years ago, it happened to Spurs. We are left with the same group of players that won us the FA Cup, the same group of players that won us the Community Shield, that got us 5th twice. So it isn't a bad squad. It's not an awful squad we're being left with.
They're just a bit older, though, aren't they? That's the thing. They're a bit older. You've got
a season older.
Lacking incentives as well, Chris. Now,
sorry. Well, we haven't got Europe, but we finished 8th. We were 1 place off Europe. We just got to a European semi-final. No, you're telling me that Newcastle wouldn't have liked that next season? West Ham did it as well. A couple of seasons ago, West Ham were fighting relegation. To say that they're not going to end up.
The players that you've mentioned in the last sort of few minutes, Fofana, Maddison, Tielemans, they've probably gone as far as they can wearing a Leicester shirt, haven't they? Now,
Tielemans has. Fofana, no, he's just signed a 5-year contract, so we're absolutely in no hurry. No hurry. I mean, the fact that he has taken Leicester City off his Twitter bio is going to getting booze on Saturday when his name's announced.
Some of his
Well, the
Instagram.
5-year contract was just commodity protection, though, wasn't it? Really, on the back of that.
He signed it
broken
because
leg
he
or
was
whatever
injured
had.
at the time.
Yeah.
He is a good player, but it does mean, I mean, like Harry Maguire, right? We knew Harry Maguire was going to go to Man United the season before he did. We'd saved him from Hull because look where Hull went. They just went down and down again. We saved him, and he came to the board and went, "Look, I want to go, but I don't want you guys to lose out because you saved my career." He signed a new contract. Yes, there was clauses in it, but it meant that we could demand £80 million for him. Now, if he's worth £80 million, how much is Fofana worth?
Yeah,
Come
I
back
guess,
and start at
Chris.
95 million.
I don't think you're gonna scam any other clubs like that again, Chris.
How did you get £80 million for Harry Maguire and then now you're skint? How has this happened?
When Harry Maguire left us, he was a good player. He scored a World Cup goal when he was with
He
us.
scored one slab-head header against Sweden, and now suddenly he's flipping Nesta.
I guess the only concern,
80
Chris.
million for him, rightly or wrongly, and that's the benchmark.
Yeah,
God,
I guess
It shows how much of a joke Man United are when they should have spent £40 million and got Johnny Evans back.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
The only
But then he
concern,
missed a lot
Chris,
of
is
that
that
season.
you sell these
Go on,
players, and like say Tielemans goes, say Maddison goes, and Fofana, or even two out of those three. It's the lack of time that you've got to potentially bring bodies in. I guess that's the only concern that you've got
The thing
now.
we've got to remember is that again, this happened with Maguire because we knew he was going. We got Soyuncu in, and now these players come in, and they are thrown into the team, and they are expected to do brilliant from day one. Well, they come to a strange country. They've not got any friends with them. Probably got the family with them. They're playing in a league that is completely different to the one they've played in. Soyuncu would have sunk if he'd started as soon as he came over, but he had that season to bed in. And when it came in, I think we got the best deal, to be honest with you, 80 million, and we got Soyuncu in. We ain't going to sell all those players. We will sell one. And if it is Tielemans, we've been talking to him for a year now, and he's not wanting to sign this contract. He's still playing well for us. He's still giving his all. He's not doing a Mahrez. He's not sat on a French airport waiting for his agent to ring him, telling him which flight to get on. He's still giving it his all. We've got a plan in there. You know, we've got some good youngsters coming through. Kieran Dewsbury Hall, you hadn't heard of him a year ago. You know, he went to Luton on loan. He came back with had won virtually every award going. So there's going to be plans in place. We would be absolutely stupid to sell all these players. And it's a case of whichever one goes first.
Or all three because you're so skint.
But no, we're not skint. We are
You're
not
skint. You're skint, Chris. Your club's finished. You've had your fun in Europe. Your owners have got no money.
What's that there? Oh, it's the Premier League trophy. You've never won one of them, have you?
It's living in the past podcast, is it?
Speaking of the only Premier League winner on the show tonight, there was a difference.
He was bragging about winning the Community Shield a minute ago, Chris. Put him to bed. Put him to bed.
It's actually the English Super Cup when we won it, and we hosted it, of course, this season. But there's a difference between not being able to buy anybody and being skint.
Do you know what, Chris?
I've hated Wolves since Mark McGee went there because he thought Mark McGee left Leicester, went to Wolverhampton because he thought Wolves were the bigger club. Hey, that worked out well for him.
Well, I mean, we are, but it was a bad move at the time by him. Yeah, I agree.
You're the bigger club, but he finished below us in the league. How do you work that out?
Do you know what the problem is, Chris? And I think you mentioned it earlier. You said, didn't you, that you don't need to sell anybody. And I take that point, but the trouble is, your manager has kind of contradicted that by saying that you can't buy anyone until you sell someone. So it's just a shame. Yeah, but every club needs to refresh. They've got to refresh.
Yes, we do, but we've still got that squad, like I say, that finished fifth twice, that won the FA and the Charity Shield. It's not the end of the world. If we do not sell, buy anybody, we are not going to get relegated. We're not going to side that's going to get relegated. You know.
But then the trouble is, Chris, to counteract that, you're absolutely right. You've got a good squad, and I don't think relegation's even on the cards. But obviously year on year, if that continues, and then say, I don't know, Tielemans goes, Maddison goes, Fofana goes, maybe not all together, but gradually, that's when the worry creeps in then, isn't it? Because then will Rodgers start questioning his position? Will other players...
I mean, Rodgers is very good at self-preservation. You know, he's very good at coming out and blaming everybody else but himself. I like Rodgers. I don't want him to go, but if he goes, the club carries on. You know, clubs are no bigger than anywhere. As long as we don't get Steve Bruce, I'm not particularly bothered. We've got to accept that. And the problem with a lot of fans, and I'm saying Leicester fans here, is they suddenly think because we finished fifth twice and because we won the FA Cup that we've got a godforsaken right to finish, to do that every season. Fans of every club expect it. But how long did it take Liverpool to win the Premier League or the top flight again? 30 years. When did Manchester United last win a title? About 13 years ago. If you have a couple of bad years, it's not the end of your club. Your club gets into trouble when it gets relegated. You've been there, Newcastle fans.
Yeah, we've been there twice. We know how it feels. West Ham have been there before.
West
Villa.
Ham nearly went there not so long ago. And Villa have just come up, and obviously Wolves not so long ago. But that's when you start getting in trouble, because you've then got a hell of a lot of players that you're paying on fantastic wages, and you're in the Burnley have had to get rid of most of their squad. Yeah, that's the trouble. If you can just have a couple of bad years and ride it out, it's not the end of the world. But to answer the main question of the show, are we going to be challenging for Europe? We haven't got Europe to worry about this season, but I would question whether we would or not. I think we'll be finishing in that 8th, 9th, 10th sort of place.
Okay, that's a fair point. I just wanted to add, because I think it was a good point that I think Chris all mentioned about the Brendan Rodgers situation, in terms of Brendan Rodgers. Yeah, you've talked about you don't need to sell anybody, and you're probably right. You don't need to. You could probably go into the season the way you are with the squad you've got, and you could probably comfortably be anywhere between 12th to, like you've said, 8th, maybe a highest, in my opinion. Just my opinion. But the one thing you've got is you've got a manager that likes to sign players. If you look at his career, he predominantly likes to continually refresh his squad and sign players. And the fact that he's not been able to do that, I think it's told in his last couple of press conferences, where he's talked about Maddison, and then he's talked openly about the fact that there are financial difficulties there. I think he's gone about it probably in the wrong way from a club point of view, and he's given a lot of clubs out there an incentive to want to try and bid for those players. And I think that's been what we've now seen in terms of 2 bids from Newcastle. I believe there'll be a third before the week's out. I think there'll be a third bid for Maddison. I think it'll be 50 million north, and I think it will ask some questions of Leicester City. What it's also done is what you've just talked about, Chris, from a Leicester point of view, in that Wesley Fofana today has taken his Leicester City tag off his bio. He's been tweeting out, not tweeting out. He's been putting on his Instagram a picture of him with a bubble, a cloud bubble, a thinking bubble above his head. He's put another tweet out in French that basically, I think it was.
Why do they do this?
Denzel Washington was on the picture. There was words written. It was a famous saying, I think. And I can't remember it off by heart, but basically what he's saying is that sometimes he has to make decisions for himself that other people aren't going to like. And
I really wanted you to say Gary Lineker shags crisps then.
That's probably going to be his next Instagram post. I don't know, maybe.
Let me just read you this from Wesley Fofana. He tweeted this, and it's pinned to the top of his Twitter.
Background violins.
It was not easy for me, but thanks to you all, I came back stronger. Me and my family won't forget all the love you sent me during that difficult time. Be sure that I'll be always doing the best for the Foxes. Thank you for your unconditional support. He has got some stick for that. I mean, I tweeted back to him, actions speak louder than words. And it basically is what everybody is saying. I'm going to be interested to see what his sort of reception is going to be. But like I said, at the end of the day, he's signed to a 5-year contract, and it depends. I mean, Rodgers, like I say, I think he's the 7th best paid manager in the league. He's got to show now that he can earn that he is good. Yes, he's done it in Scotland, but like I say, any of us lot could have done that. He didn't even have Rangers for most of that time because they were in the lower leagues. So he's got a lot to prove. It wasn't so long ago that Man United, Spurs, everybody else was being linked with him.
Yeah.
Nobody is now. And that's the thing with Tielemans 12 months ago. They probably would have, scored the goal at Wembley, won us the FA Cup. If he'd gone then, we'd have had, there'd have been queues. But because we've had a bad season, suddenly everybody's disappeared.
I'll just touch on Tielemans just before we move on to the next club. Is that Tielemans has got a year left on his contract. I think it's been made clear that he doesn't want to sign a new deal. He obviously wants to leave. He wants to leave for Champions League football. There was talk that he wanted to go to Arsenal. Arsenal then got Fabio Vieira from Porto, who plays in a similar position, a similar role. And so I think that's thrown a little bit of a spanner in the works. Newcastle have been linked with him. We were linked with him. Ben Jacobs, a friend of the channel, obviously journalist and Leicester fan, had reported that Newcastle were interested in him and actually asked the question with regards to Tielemans. There is
West Ham.
West Ham it could be another option. Throw Villa in the
pot. It's silly now. Come on.
Is that? but the point being is that obviously he's in a position where he wants to be out, and that actually with a year left on his contract, he could go. But I think the reason why he hasn't gone is because Leicester is still looking at sort of 30 million for him. Now, I think that if I'm right in thinking they signed him for 40 from Monaco. Now, with a year left on your contract, for him to go for 10 million less than his valuation, I don't think. And I think this is the reason why a lot of other clubs haven't gone in for him, is that although he's a very talented player, I don't think the clubs are willing to pay that sort of money for him now. And as the window goes on with 4 weeks to go, I think that's one that could move. And actually, with Leicester, maybe not, desperate for funds and transfer funds, that the likes of Arsenal, maybe Chelsea, maybe West Ham, Newcastle, Villa are looking at it and maybe saying later on in the window, because of Leicester's desperation to want him to move on, because they know that he won't sign a new deal and therefore will be going for nothing, they may get him at a cheaper price. And that might be what's being discussed at the moment. Now, Tielemans wants his future sorted. Now he wants to know who he's playing for and devote his season for that. But obviously, it's not going to work out like that. So I think it's a difficult situation all round. But I think
he's got the World Cup. Like we said with the other players, he's got the World Cup coming up in November, and he wants to be playing well and regularly to get into that squad. Yes, he's got a year left on his contract. Yes, we are demanding certain amounts of money, and I don't know why we're not selling for the sake of losing 10 million. For God's sake, we signed Jan Vestergaard for 15, and we've turned down 12. I mean, what the fuck? Just
why you did that? I have no idea.
I'd have sold him for 3 million. Yeah, I'd have taken whatever was offered, but they've turned down 2 offers for it, and I'm like, if we're that short, and that's what makes me think we're not necessarily that short of money. If we're turning down offers for Vestergaard, who's as much use as a fart in a spacesuit, to be honest with you, then how bad are we off?
But the thing is, Chris, is it the fact that that Leicester value Tielemans at 30 million and everyone's kind of balking at that and going, we're not paying 30 million, we'll give you 10, 15. And I suppose from a Leicester point of view, you're thinking, well, if Tielemans is going to help us for the rest of the season, is it worth letting him run his contract down and then letting him go based on the fact that what he will provide you for this season?
I was just going to say that very same point. Last season, like I say, people would have paid 30 million for him. They'd have been queuing at the door. He's had to, because of the injuries we've had last season, he had to play in a more defensive role, which isn't him. He didn't stand out as much. And I say, had he played that position in the FA Cup, he wouldn't have got that goal. What we've got to try and balance out is if we save it, don't sell him. Yeah, okay, we're going to lose 40 million on the deal. We lost 30 million on Slimani, and you know what he was like, guys. You had him at your place, and we lost 30 million because we had to let him go for nothing. But if we keep him, could he be the difference between us finishing 8th or maybe 6th or 7th? Yes, I think he could make that sort of difference. So if he gets us into Europe and the money that comes on the back of that, but then we lose him for nothing at the end, that could be well worth doing.
Do you think Rodgers jumps ship?
If he does, he does. I mean, I'm not going to beg him to stay. He's got this reputation of always bottling it in the third season. I don't know why, because it only happened at Liverpool, but then he was never given a full season to prove them wrong. If he jumps ship, he jumps ship. Like I say, we all know that if our managers leave, if Gerrard was to leave tomorrow, the club would still go on. Mm-hmm. You'd replace him with somebody else. It's not the end of the world,
When Arteta got the Arsenal job, who else is Rodgers going to go to now? He's stuck at a ship. That's
maybe he might
2 seasons away from sinking.
He's a coach who could probably fit in like the French league or
Newcastle.
Or Newcastle. Yeah.
I'll swap you for Newcastle for Eddie Howe. I wouldn't. Like I said, a couple of seasons ago, he was being linked with everybody. He was being linked with the Man United job. He was being linked with the Spurs job. Like I said, the Arsenal job. Who wants the Arsenal job? For God's sake, you win in the Premier League, they'll still be moaning. But if he goes, he goes. He's a good coach, but he's absolutely bloody rubbish at picking players. That's his trouble. He signs some donkeys. If he goes, he goes. And I said, it's not the end of the world. He's the 7th best paid manager, like I say, in the Premier League. It's his time to now start proving that he's worth it. And our managers are not afraid. Our owners, are not afraid of cutting the cord if need be. Ranieri won us the Premier League, for God's sake. 9 months later, he was gone.
But you had money then.
Well, only the same money we've got now.
Yeah, but you can't afford to sack Rodgers now, can you?
That I don't know. I mean, like I say, this fact that everybody's saying like we've got no money, like I say, it's balls. We haven't not got money.
Skint.
We've got to sell to buy because we've got 27-man squad, right? We're only allowed to play 25. So why go out and buy players that we're not going to be able to play? Or
sound like you're trying to convince yourself now, Chris.
What I'll end that on is that maybe those 2 players that will come out to complete your 25-man squad could be for Fofana and Maddison, but we'll wait and see on that. That's for sure. But I want to switch gears now to talk West Ham United. Dan, you've been obviously waxing lyrical about your club, and rightly so, because the last couple of years you've pulled up a lot of trees. You've broken the mold. And you've done what a lot of us around the table, around the panel, wanted to do, and what I've wanted to do for a number of years now. You broke that top 6, and you've created a lot of talk about potentially breaking that top 4. Leicester were there a few years ago. You're the team now that are doing that and playing some really good football on the back of it. Just assess for me. You've had a good season last season. Europa League semi-finals, like you said before, you got the latter stages of the cups. You had good seasons all round on a quite a thin squad. Just assess to me your pre-season and your sort of transfer business, and we'll talk about the transfers a little bit more detail. But I'll put them on the board there. Just talk to me about your club and how you're looking in the build-up to the new season.
Well, I don't think we're ready after all that positivity and nice words you had to say. I don't think we're ready for the start of the season. Personally, Aguerd, as you can see there. Well, Aguerd, as you can see there, looks really a real quality player. He looks like he's going to be out for a few months after picking up an injury in pre-season. Areola, I think absolute quality. We don't know yet though if Moyes is going to start him now over Fabianski. He's going to transition that. Flynn Downs, it gives us depth in that midfield challenges Souček, but how long he'll take to be ready for the Prem is another point entirely. And then Scamacca, that's the big one. That's the big signing for us. You know,
Diamante Mark II.
Who?
Diamante
Mark II. Listen, I hope he's a bit better even than Diamante. The problem is we hadn't signed a striker in over 1,000 days. It'd been over 1,000 days since we'd signed a striker. It'd been 18 months since we'd replaced Allaire after selling him. He's the 50th striker Golden Sullivan have ever signed. I'm just throwing this information out there. We haven't got the best track record when it comes to strikers. However, I do feel like this is the man that can change things for us. He can break that habit. You know, he's the first striker that's signed under Moyes' new West Ham revolution. I'm not including Jordan Hugo. That was a different Moyes. That's Moyes' clone. I don't know who that guy was, but this time around, Moyes has been pretty good with the signings. We've had Rob Newman, who's come in as our head scout from Man City, and yeah, the guy looks quality. He's 6'5", but is good with the ball, can play with his feet, likes a shot from distance. And has it come away with his hold-up play. So I think he's going to link up with the team really well, but he's going to take minutes away from Antonio, which is needed. The guy, you know, was our only striker who's not even really a striker. You know, he's a winger we've converted into a striker after we tried to convert him into a right-back. And
I want to ask you the question, Dan, just on that, because, you know, Rich Story, who's obviously a part of Loaded, he wanted to get your thoughts on Scamacca, and he wanted to get your thoughts kind of, you know, because of the fact that Newcastle were linked with him at some point, Arsenal, PSG were also linked with him too. You've managed to get him over the line and get him into your club. You've just talked about Mikel Antonio there, who's been your mainstay striker, who's played a lot of minutes for you guys over the last couple of years. Is Gianluca Scamacca coming in to just play a bit part, or is he coming in to start? Who do you think is going to start the season for you up top?
Well, I think it's going to. Well, Antonio picked up a knock in training before preseason the other day. So if he's fit, I think Antonio starts. You know, Scamacca's 23 years old. Moyes doesn't usually just get a new signing and put them in straight away. He slow burns them. You know, which he done with Bowen even. You know, he's come on really well. As much as everyone's screaming, like, start this player, he'll take his time. So I can't see Scamacca starting for maybe the whole of August. I'd be surprised unless Antonio's injured. It will take a while. Then he'll start as we get more games. We've got Europe. We've got quite a few games actually in August. So with the Conference League, he may get a start there. The problem is he hasn't played any preseason with us. You know, due to the time we started him. So we'll see how his match fitness is. But if he's match fit, I think he can start. I think he'll possibly start the European Conference games. I can see that because we've got 2 legs in August in the middle of all our Prem games. But yeah, I think as it stands, it's Antonio's place to lose, even though he did sort of really taper off last season. He started really brightly. But I think fatigue did get the best of him because he had, like, you know, the Premier League games. He played in, like, the Cup games. He played, obviously, in the Europa League games. And he was playing for Jamaica. All that travelling, all that game time when usually he misses a lot of the season with injury. And now he's stayed fit, but he's playing a lot of football. So, yeah, I think he can still be the main man, Antonio. But I think with Scamacca, we've got someone who's a better finisher. Whereas Antonio, he's got that physicality, he's got the strength, he's got the pace, and you know we know what we're getting with him. But I think we need someone like Scamacca who's going to be a little bit more clinical. So it's going to be a transitional, just to answer your question in a short way over him and Scamacca.
No, interesting. So look, from your perspective, before I go around the houses, from your perspective, you know, you've set the benchmark. You've been there or thereabouts every season the last couple of years. Do you believe that you are ready and set? I know you said you're not ready for the season, but do you think you can maintain that for a third season and continue to push the likes of the top 6 to really kind of push yourselves back in and continue to fight for Europe?
Yeah, I think we can. Like I said, I think we might start the season a bit slow. Obviously, we've got Man City opening game of the season, then Nottingham Forest's first game at home, for in the Prem for 25 years or whatever it is. So even though it's a tough August, I do think that we will get some more players in, and we'll have another good European challenge. And I do see us finishing in 6th or 7th. You look at what we did last season with such a thin squad, one of the thinnest squads in the league last season. We pushed like that top 4 race for quite a while, really. It weren't until we started facing the big teams in Europe where Premier League started to sort of take a backseat, and we started to slip away from that top 4. I think we spent more time in 4th than any of the other teams challenging for it. If I'm not mistaken, we was in there for quite a long time. But yeah, the squad depth hurt us this season. Improving the squad depth, and we're improving, the structure around the club. We've made some good coaching signings. So yeah, I can't see, and with the Conference League, obviously Chris's team was in there last season, but I just look at how the Europa League was and the amount of quality teams they were in, really not much room for rotation. Whereas, yes, we want to take it seriously, but it should be a slightly less taxing competition, and we should be able to not just put out the youngsters, but be able to rotate some of the players that would be on the bench during the Prem and give them more minutes. So I think we'll be less taxed and we'll be less stretched this season. And I think Moyes is building consistency within the side since he's coming the second time. So I'd be very surprised, if we're not just challenging, but maybe leading the race out of the teams that are here and trying to cinch. I mean, I'm looking at Man United and trying to take their position. Someone mentioned earlier, why Man United here? I think their position in the top 6 is most up for grabs, and I think we could be challenging them for that spot.
Dan, just while we're talking West Ham, I just wanted to ask you, what were your thoughts on Jesse Lingard? Because obviously it was like the worst kept secret that Jesse Lingard was looking like, he had a verbal or gentleman's agreement with West Ham, and it was a matter of time or a formality that he was going to be joining West Ham. But from your perspective, and also as kind of from a fan base perspective, were you surprised by Jesse Lingard going to Forest, or were you disappointed, or did you feel like you've had a lucky escape?
I think, what? It's sort of like a mixture of all of them. It's like a mixed emotions with the Lingard thing. I think like quite a few of our clubs that are here were linked with Lingard. I know Newcastle definitely were. I think I did see links with Villa. But it just seemed to me like money was on his agenda. And while it was still looking likely that he was coming to West Ham, I tweeted out saying the big issue is the guy took pre-season off. He had a holiday on pre-season, and if he was really serious, he would have arranged a club in his future, like for that start of the pre-season. He knew even back in January he was going to be leaving. And he done really well at West Ham, and was getting back into consideration for the England squad. And now it comes up, and he's like, "Oh no, I'm going to wait until like this date in July, like near the end of July, then I'm going to make my decision." It's like, what is that? If you're serious, if your mentality is in the right place, you want to sort out your club as soon as possible. But, he wanted a bidding war. We were never going to... I think he wanted to come back to West Ham, but we just wanted us to be the highest bidder. And we were never going to get into that. I think the most we offered was 130 grand a week, which we saw as generous, which I do think is generous. And we weren't going to budge on that. And I'm happy we didn't, because he does not deserve to be earning 200 grand a week. He was earning half that, if that, at Man United. And there was no guarantee he was going to replicate the form he had. I didn't even expect, even if we signed him, I wouldn't expect that of him to replicate that form. That form was just crazy. So yeah, he could have been a good player for us and he fits our system, but I do think ultimately it's a lucky escape, because I don't think he's got the right mentality for what we're trying to push on for as a club. He wants to make his money fast. He's at that stage of his career. Do that. We want players that want to achieve and want to win. Yeah. I think ultimately seeing how it panned out at the time, I wanted him, but seeing how it panned out, I'm glad. that we're going a different direction. Cornet seems to be the alternative, Maxwell Cornet, which I'm happy with.
Yeah, it's been in the chat. A number have mentioned about Maxwell Cornet from Burnley. We seem to be in the mix as well. Newcastle and West Ham and Everton seem to be the three teams that are really kind of gunning for him. You know, if you were to, obviously both of our links, West Ham and Newcastle. I think you're copying this, Dan. I've got to be honest. In terms of this,
Rich coming from you lot.
But you know, from that point of view, you know, do you see someone like a Maxwell Cornet fitting in? Where does he fit in your starting lineup? Will he play regular? You know, what are your thoughts about that potential deal?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it'll be interesting to see that if he does play, you know, in a side like West Ham or Newcastle, whatever, maybe a side that's not as pragmatic as Burnley, and he gets a little bit more freedom. You know, he could potentially come in and challenge like a Ben Rama or Fornals and really offer something creatively. And he seems to be quite versatile with the positions he can play, which is good for us. So, yeah, I really rate him. There's other players that I'm interested in, like Emmanuel Dennis and, you know, players like that, and looking at Watford. So, but if we got him, yeah, I'd definitely be happy, and I definitely think he could be a good player at West Ham. So, yeah, I think he would fit.
Definitely. Look, around the table, Rich, Little Dan, Chris, thoughts on West Ham. But before we move on, what do you think? Do you think that West Ham are, as Dan said, the team that are kind of leading the way right now? Or do you think, you know, after a couple of good seasons, do you think there might well be a drop off at some point?
I think keeping Declan Rice has been massive, or will be massive. I guess, Dan, you're kind of counting down the days of the transfer window to make sure that he's still around. But yeah, I definitely think they'll be the team to kind of beat. And I think from watching them last season, from a Villa perspective, they're kind of the benchmark side, like in terms of the physicality of them, how sort of solid they are at the back, and then the speed on the break, particularly like Gerrard Bowen and Ben Rama and one or two others. And obviously you've added to that this season. I would have maybe expected one or two more signings just to kind of cement that, or just to broaden that squad, because it was stretched really thin towards the end of last season. But, you know, some of the wins that they got, I mean, beating Liverpool and just the way that you sort of demolished Villa really at Villa Park, it was just, I think that's something that Gerrard has looked at and thought, this is where we need that physicality in our team, because competing against the likes of West Ham, Newcastle with Joe Linton and Bruno and that in midfield, and Crystal Palace with the signings that they've made in their midfield, it's the way that the Premier League's going. So I definitely think West Ham are kind of that benchmark team for us to look at, and to kind of, you know, if we can finish above West Ham, then I think we'll be somewhere towards that top 7, top 6, which is definitely definitely going some.
Little Dan, your thoughts on West Ham?
I think West Ham are purely Wolves with momentum. I think they've got 12 or 13 really top class players, but then the depth afterwards. Well, we had this conversation on another podcast, Dan. Towards the end of the season, you were trying to give us 7th place, weren't you? Because the Europa League took so much focus on you that the Premier League there was no energy for it, was there, on those Sunday fixtures after a Thursday game? As I said, I think 11, 12, 13 players you've got who can start every week, top class players. I think the depth will cost him over the long term again. I mean, I'll ask a quick question, Dan. If you were given the option of just writing off the Conference League, would you accept it?
Do you know what? I would. I'd like to win it personally. I think it's winnable for us. I think we did really well in the Europa League.
Sacrificing top 7 though.
Well, yeah, because you think about it, if we win that, we get Europa League. So that would get us into Europa League. We get a trophy, which is, you know, I was speaking to this with some other guys. I would rather win that than the Carabao, personally. I look at that as it's a new trophy, but it's a European trophy. Carabao gets you into the Conference League. And the Conference League trophy gets you into Europa League. It's more money in the conference, so I hold it in, even though it's new, in a little bit higher esteem than the League Cup. So yeah, I would rather win that, but I think we can go a little bit further in that. I think we can win it and then still maintain that. Like our depth should be better this season than it was last season, I think.
I think the Conference League is still a bit underrated. I mean, I know you mentioned like the Europa League was quite difficult and there wasn't much room for rotation, but I think Chris will sort of reiterate there is still quite a lot of strong teams in that Conference League. I mean, Marseille was in it last season, weren't they?
Yeah, Napoli, obviously Roma won it.
Yeah, there's some big sides in there when you get to the knockout stages. That I still think that your depth will cost you both in the long term.
The semi-finals, actually, including ourselves, there was the 4 teams that a couple of years ago had all been in the Champions League. The conference was no easy, and I think Spurs suffered because they treated it like a tin pot cup. But I think it was us 6 sat around the table with the clubs we support. I think we'd all take a European trophy, wouldn't we? Whatever shape or size it comes in.
I think it's fantastic for the fans as well to get out to Europe. I mean, like for West Ham fans, Dan, and for Leicester fans, Chris, like it's just. I mean, for me as a Villa fan, I've never been to like a European game. Never.
I don't agree with the fact
away from home. Yeah.
I don't agree with the fact that because we failed in the Europa, that we dropped into the conference. If we fail at the Europa, we should be out. Man United nearly won the Europa League a few years ago. They went out on penalties in the final, but that was only because they failed at the Champions League. It's stupid. You fail at one, and so you get dropped into the one below.
I think it's their way of just trying to get bigger teams in there.
Oh, it is.
It's the rich, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, had we qualified for where Napoli did last season, we'd have played Barcelona in the next round, as Napoli did. And they got knocked out by Barcelona. And yet we got all the way to the semi-final. I would have killed to have won that trophy last season. And in regards to West Ham, I really wanted West Ham to do it last season. I don't care whether it's Wolves, Aston Villa, West Ham, Newcastle, or whoever. I just like to see other teams in the so-called Sky's favourite 6 get into that top, group of teams and cause a bit of a stink. And I think I'm the same as everybody else on this table. I just think it could be the depth of squad that could do for you, to be honest with you.
You're a better man than me, Chris, thinking I'd like to see you win a flipping European trophy. You're a better man than me, Chris.
I think on the depth, I think when I look at what we need, I think we're a left back and a left winger and a central midfielder away from having not just obviously a quality side, but that depth, because we get a top left back in, you've got Creswell understudy. I think we've got enough depth in the centre-back position. I'm happy at right back. We've got Soufal, Ben Johnson, who can also play left back. And then we've got Harrison Ashby, who's looking like the future. We've got Bowen on the right. We've got a shitload of players that can play left or right. But, you've got Fornals who can play there. We've got Lanzini, Antonio now, and Scamacca up front. Obviously, Rice, Souček as the main ones with Flynn Downs behind. So we get those extra positions in. I think there's enough depth there. So I think we're just 3 signings away from being as close to where we want to be able to handle that.
I just wish for one. Don't be greedy. I only want one.
At this point now, look, we'll move on because I want to talk Wolves before we get into a little bit of talk of Newcastle as well before we end the show. But Wolves, obviously, you were the ones that were the surprise team last season. You made that push and nobody really expected it. Whether you did, little down, I'm not too sure. We'll get your thoughts in a second. But, Wolves were in the mix for the long parts of the season. But looking at your business this summer, obviously, Hwang Hee-chan, I think that made that move permanent, if I'm right in thinking. Nathan Collins has now made the move from Burnley to Wolves. Just give us your assessment of Wolves this summer. Give us your thoughts on how your business has been this summer and what your thoughts are for the season. Do you see yourselves continuing that run that you had last season, or do you think it might be a more difficult season for you as a Wolves fan, little Dan? What do you think?
I don't know whether it's that chicken burger I had earlier, but I just feel sick looking at that transfer business there. It's honestly, I'm
not to
really
make it sick anymore. I'm going to put it back up for you.
I mean, it's so deflating, really. You see the sort of the money teams get every season there purely just from TV money, and our owners aren't giving our coach. He's coaching with two hands behind his back. I mean, you probably can coach with two hands behind your back. You only need a voice, really. But honestly, he's fighting an uphill battle, and I feel really bad for the guy. And when the majority of football fans, including our own, are having our season ticket prices increasing every other season, you're not seeing any sort of decent amount of investment being put back on the pitch. It's massively deflating. It makes you wonder why you bother going to work Monday to Friday to spend your Saturday watching a club that isn't willing to compete. I understand. I'm not saying, and I know Newcastle fans will agree with this. We're not demanding that we're in a title race. You just want to try and be on a compete below the teams who have got stupid money.
Yeah.
And this is our fifth consecutive season, fifth season in the Premier League now.
Yeah, I think so,
and obviously we probably Nuno was probably a victim of his own success in finishing 7th in the first season and then getting to the quarterfinal of the Europa League in the second, but not replacing Jimenez when he had his head injury, and just not strengthening our depth is just massively deflating. And I just wonder, any man with integrity probably would have resigned, but I'm not sure how good a job Bruno Lage could get with his current stock value. It's disappointing. I still think we can do well, but I think because everyone else around us has massively improved compared to us, I just think it's probably going to be another mid-table finish.
Little Dan, I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions actually, just based on those transfers that Pete flashed up there. So I know Fabio Silva went out on loan to Anderlecht. So I wanted to ask you about that, because obviously he came in, and correct me if I'm wrong, he came in with quite the big price tag, didn't he? And everyone thought that he was going to be, the next big thing. He could possibly be, the understudy or the person who overtakes Val Jimenez. But I also wanted to ask you about Ruben Vinagre, because I hadn't realised. So has Ruben Vinagre joined Sporting Lisbon for $8.5 million and then gone on loan to Everton? Is that right, or is that a different player?
That's the same one. We sold him to Sporting Lisbon last summer. I think we've got some sort of I think we've got a 50% sell-on clause with him. Right. I think he's joined Everton on loan with the option to buy. I think he's missed 100 step overs. That's all he is. He is a quality player, but when we were talking about Ryan Aït-Nouri earlier, he's just not in the same hemisphere. He is probably a 15th place and below Premier League left back, and I think Everton are still in a relegation battle this season, losing Richarlison, and I don't see them getting out of it, and I don't think Frank Lampard's the man to get him out of it. I know they had a bit of momentum towards the end, but as soon as they go on another bout of defeats, they'll turn again.
Yeah, no, I agree. And also, just on the back of you mentioned Aït-Nouri again. I remember when he first played for Wolves, and I was watching him. I think I mentioned it, Pete, to you, didn't I? And the lads saying that Aït-Nouri looks really good. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Johnny is currently occupying the position. Do you think Aït-Nouri replaces Johnny this season, or do you think Johnny's still got the position as his own, if you like?
It's difficult. Nelson Semedo was injured for the majority of August. When he comes back, I still think Aït-Nouri will have the left back position. I reckon about 70%. It's now down. It'll be Ryan Aït-Nouri, but Johnny is literally he's so reliable. Yeah. When he first joined Wolves, and I saw he was only a couple of inches taller than me, I thought he's going to get ruined in the Premier League. But he's one of the most reliable defenders I've seen in a Wolves shirt. But that's just how much sort of credit I'm giving Aït-Nouri, that I think he's sealed that left back spot. Ryan Aït-Nouri is an exceptional talent, and he's only going to get better. I think he's He's bulked up a bit more in pre-season this summer. I genuinely think he'll be in the French national side within the next 18 months.
Interesting. Yeah. Any thoughts from the other boys before we move on to wrap up with Newcastle? Go on, Richie.
Have a dig, Rich. Come on.
You can see he was desperate. He was desperate to get in there. Go on, Rich. Go on.
I think Wolves. I do think Wolves will struggle a little bit. I have to say, I think the momentum that you lost from the back end of last season will have some effect, and I think the lack of signings will have some effect on the new season. Obviously, you've mentioned about Jimenez being injured, needing a striker. I mean, you hardly scored any goals last season, so that has to be a concern if you don't have such a good defensive record this season, and it is difficult with other teams improving so much. Having said that, I've watched a couple of your pre-season games, and some of the football that you're playing is fantastic. So you've got a good coach that can produce some really good football, and I don't think so. I do think in terms of the lack of goals, I think some of it was down to sort of poor finishing. Like, you did create a lot of chances in a lot of games, but I do have a little bit of a concern for Wolves if they don't improve in certain areas. Aitno is a good player. Kilman's a good player. Moutinho's still there, yes.
Yeah. This is what I was saying about to Dan earlier. West Ham have Wolves momentum. I don't think there's a sort of Rice and Souček are pretty much Neves and Moutinho for me. They're such a solid pairing, but there's no backup after those two.
Yeah, I love Moutinho. I think he's one of the best players, best centre midfielders in the Premier League. Like, he is absolutely. But I just think he's not getting any younger, is he? And that's the tricky part. And
he's catching up with Chris, to be fair, Moutinho.
Yeah. And Neves has seemed to be linked away, but he's still around at the minute. So
Neves has been linked to Man United again this evening if they don't get Frankie de Jong. So it's a bit like the same situation with Declan Rice. We're just counting down the days because we need to be building a squad around the likes of Ruben Neves.
Exactly.
I mean, what does it say for the club if you let players like that go when you don't reinvest correctly?
Exactly. So I mean, we've got the bit of a rivalry, but ultimately, Wolves are a good side, and but I just worry for the goals, the injuries, because even Pedence and Neto have been injured quite a lot, and then that squad depth and and just lack of signings. I just think
you mentioned Podence and Neto there. We were without both of them for the majority of last season. If those two can stay fit, I don't see why we can't finish top half because they're two exceptional wingers. I think when Daniel Podence started for Wolves last season, we won 70% of our games. So he's massively key for us this season. And we're we're 2 players away from Europe or getting relegated. It's that close.
Are there any links? Are there any links for incomings?
For our esports team, yeah. I don't know if you guys are aware, but Wolves are heavy on brand with the esports world now. Esports is before the football team now. We're big in esports.
Well, that's
we were there once. We were there when we weren't signing any players, but then we announced a new flipping esports signing. Like, it's the Dragon, and they were like, "What the fuck is this?"
I'll take that as a no then.
Yeah. But look, as we've said before, it could all change. There's 4 weeks to go. Lots of deals, I think, will be done last minute. I do think that the transfer window for a lot of clubs in the build up to the deadline day, I think will be as busy as it ever has been this summer. Yeah. Because
you've got to think that clubs are keeping a couple of aces up their sleeve, or depending on injuries, how players start the season. They don't want to play all their cards before that season starts, do they?
Rich, I think you're in sync with me and Chris H, because you've said that in terms of putting their cards close to their chest, not revealing their hand, and you're talking very much Newcastle talk, and that's what we're going to go to next to kind of finish off the show. And look, we'll talk about Newcastle United because I mean, I want to get your thoughts, and actually there's been a few in the chat that have said they're really interested to know what your guys' thoughts are on Newcastle. So, you know, I'll put it up on the screen. We got Matt Target from yourself, Rich. We made that loan permanent for it says 15, between 12 and 15 million. Nick Pope on an undisclosed bid talked about it being 10 million. It was even talked about with Kieran Maguire, who's a friend of the channel, that says we've only paid little as 3 million for that deal in its first instalment. And then we've got who I think me and Chris H will both agree is a phenomenal signing in Sven Botman, who's looked absolutely phenomenal in pre-season. He's looked a real player at centre back. We've gone through a list of players, you know, some young, some experienced. Isaac Hayden's gone on loan to Norwich. Freddie Woodman has gone to Preston on a permanent deal. Jeff Hendrick's gone on loan to Reading. Kieran Clark to Sheffield United. Dwight Gale on a permanent to Stoke. 48 million at the moment spent, 0 received at this moment in time. Although obviously the undisclosed for Freddie Woodman might give us a little something. But look, Chris, look, I'll ask you, Chris H, I'll ask you first what your opinion is on our business, and then I want to get the thoughts of everyone else before we kind of look at where we're going to finish this season.
Do you know what? I think I forget which show it was, Pete, because we're doing loads of shows at the minute, aren't we? But I forget which show it was, but somebody described our transfer window as 6 out of 10. And I think, to be fair, I think that's a really fair reflection. I think it was Paul Oxley, actually. And I think that is probably about right, because I think the 3 additions that have been brought in, I'm going to ask the panel a question in a minute, actually, about one of these signings. But the 3 additions that we've brought in, I think, are solid. Are they going to get anyone up off the seats? Probably not. I think it's fair to say that. But I think they improve us as a squad. And, you know, Little Dan was talking before about having a strong 11, 12, 13. But then it's what's behind that 11, 12, 13. And if we carry on in the way that we are, and we gradually improve the squad as a whole without signing too many superstars, which obviously cost a hell of a lot of money, that can only help us going forward. You know, we were never going to get taken over and within 2 years sign, 25 players and all of a sudden be a PSG, a Man City or whatever. It's going to be a slow, gradual build. And I think bringing in the players that we've brought in can only, aid that and help us. We're already talking that we're going to be in the top 10 this season. We're all very hopeful of that and quite confident that will happen. Some people are saying top 8, some people are saying top 6. That will all depend on the rest of the transfer window for me. I still feel like we're 2, possibly 3 players light. I would like to see a striker come in, because as we all know, if Callum Wilson is missing, then we literally have Chris Wood, and that is it, which is a little bit worrying. we heard Dan before say, about the fact that, he's got Mikel Antonio, they've got Skamaka, and already you're going, 2 great options. And that's where we need to be as a club. Rich was mentioning before Ollie Watkins, Danny Ings. We just don't have that depth. And that's why I think we need a striker. I also think we need a right winger, even though Miguel Almiron has had a fantastic pre-season, and who knows, he's been here 3 years now. Maybe the pennies dropped. Maybe Eddie Howe has coached him, to kind of produce that end product more. Who knows? And obviously we've been linked recently with the likes of James Maddison, and obviously Lucas Paqueta has been linked. Players like that. That's why I think we need probably 2 or 3 players for me to really push us on and to go, okay, the minimum's top 8. And I think with 2 really good signings who provide us with depth, but also possibly improve the 11 as it stands, will only stand us in good stead. But what I wanted to ask Little Dan, Rich and Dan is their thoughts on Nick Pope, because as you probably all know or can hear, I'm from Liverpool, and a lot of my, not so much my Liverpool mates, but my Everton mates were all almost mocking the fact that we'd signed Nick Pope for 10 million. It was almost as if, what are you doing that for? And why would you sign someone like him? And obviously, as you all know, we've got Martin Dubravka, we've got Carl Darlow, and we've got Mark Gillespie. who's really our fair choice goalie. So we've got 4 keepers at the minute. But for me, and Pete, I think I'm fair to say this, when we signed Nick Pope, I was pretty happy with the deal, and I felt like it was a good, solid signing. You mentioned before that there's rumours we've only paid around 3 million for him, and I think that's us cutting a bit of the Chris Wood money off. So Burnley still owe us some of the Chris Wood money from the Burnley deal when we signed him. So allegedly we wrote that money off and said, we'll tell you what, just give us this amount. We'll just give you this amount for Nick Pope and you don't owe us the Chris Wood money. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But for me, I feel like 10 million for 10 million for Nick Pope is a bit of a steal. But do you think I'm being a bit deluded there, or do you think I'm being? What are your thoughts on that?
I think he massively improves on what you've got. We were linked with Nick Pope. It was either Nick Pope or Areola. I think a lot of our fans were leading to Areola just because we saw what he could do in a West Ham shirt last season. But it was split. I think a lot of people were open to Nick Pope. And if we didn't have Areola already last season, everyone would have been buzzing off that signing. So I think it's very smart buy. And I think, it improves you. Like, obviously, Dubravka's been there for a while. He's never been one to set the Premier League alight or get people talking or have people linked with him of trying to maybe clubs trying to come in for him or anything like that. Right. So he's been a good steady player for Newcastle for a while. This is an upgrade. So you can't look at it, anything else. I think, like, if you look at Everton, okay, they've got Pickford. Maybe they don't need a Pope, but I think a lot of clubs could do with that transfer. So you should absolutely be buzzing off it, and I think it is a bargain.
I agree. I think he's a good goalkeeper, and like you with Dubravka, decent goalkeeper, but never quite commanded his box enough for me. Made some good saves, but sometimes those saves were probably because he got himself into that little bit of trouble by not collecting a ball or not demanding something from the centre backs or something like that. So I think that's something. And also teams like to carry 2 really good goalkeepers now to try and push the other one on. Like you look at Fabianski and Areola for West Ham. Villa have got Robert Olsen, who's the Swedish international goalkeeper, and Emi Martinez. You've got to have 2 good goalkeepers now to push that other one on. So even though if it makes Dubravka better, then obviously it's done its job as well. But yeah, the only question I'd have on Pope is the ability with the ball on the floor. How likes to play decent football, and you want to try and play out from the back quickly, then that could be a slight issue with Nick Pope.
We saw a little bit of that, Rich, I'm not going to lie, in the pre-season. Pete, you probably remember it was right at the start when we signed him. And Newcastle, all of a sudden, the media team's become fantastic. We release videos and we can kind of see the lads training and stuff like that. And for us Newcastle fans, that's fantastic because under Mike Ashley, we were basically, penned out. Nobody ever saw anything like that. And there was a very short clip of Nick Pope being passed the ball, and he looks so awkward with the ball. Like it was bad, and we were thinking, oh my god, hopefully this isn't a sign of things to come. But
I'm surprised they even put it out. I'll be honest.
I know.
I think I remember saying on another show that like Nick Pope fumbled the ball into feet and then played it off really quickly. It was an awful ball. And then Dubravka comes in and he the concentration on him because he knows he's being filmed, and the touch is immaculate. The pass is immaculate. It's almost like he's trying to play himself into that first team. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Chris. It was a bit of a moment. It was a bit of one of them ones. Yeah. But Nick Pope is a great shot stopper. I think in pre-season, Chris should agree. We've already seen the quality saves that he can make, and he can produce on a big level. And Martin Dubravka's of the same ilk. Chris from Leicester till I die, who's obviously had to leave the show, but he's been linked with Leicester as a possible make way for Maddison. It's one of them to keep an eye on, but it's a very, very interesting situation. But we've made those bids. We're looking at the likes of Maddison. We're looking at 1 or 2 other players. Dan Lawless has talked about Emmanuel Dennis and 1 or 2 others that we're looking at. Dominic Calvert-Lewin's been a player that we've looked at. I've just seen on social media, apparently the Everton fans are saying that he picked up an injury today in training. and that he could be missing the start of the season. Everton have put 60 million on his head, but the guy can't keep fit. So how they can put that value on his head, I have no idea. But he's been a player that we've looked at. The likes of Ivan Toney, so many other players. From your perspective, guys, and I want to get your thoughts on this before we kind of wrap up. Is that we've had a resurgence. We're in the top 3 in terms of form for the back end of last season. We performed exceedingly well, more than anyone else has ever done in order to stay in the Premier League in any season since the Premier League was formed. We've hit records. We've played some fantastic football at times. We've made some good signings. Do you, in your honest opinions, think that we can really genuinely challenge Europe? Do you think that we are going to be a team that you guys individually as a clubs are going to be worried about? Or do you think it's a little bit sort of like pie in the sky and that we're going to be finishing below mid-table again and it's going to be one of those seasons? What are your thoughts on this?
Don't pull me up on this at the end of the August transfer window. But I just don't think you're in a position to be competing for the European places yet. And when we played your place the back end of the season, when Chris Wood scored the penalty, we were absolutely ponied back then. And I didn't really see anything apart from a bit of bounce within the stands to make me think that you'd massively improved on from a playing style. Obviously, Eddie Howe's come in, brought a bit of sort of cohesion together, got you playing a way that's a bit more effective than what Steve Bruce was ever trying to attempt to play. But apart from sort of Bruno Guimaraes, you still haven't brought that extra sort of squad depth to really improve yourselves, have you? And like you said, as soon as Callum Wilson picks up another knock, which is going to happen because he's made out of plasticine, you're going to struggle for goals again, aren't you? I mean, I'm not trying to be disparaging. I'm just you're going to get there at some point because your owners are here to muck about. But I still think maybe this season might be a little bit too soon, unless they properly just throw $1 billion at it and sign Mbappe like you thought they were going to do.
Well, look, I have to say that no Newcastle fan ever thought that was going to be the case, that we were going to sign that level of player, and that was 100% media driven.
There was some on Twitter when you was linked with these owners. I started seeing it. I see it.
Look, Dan, you know more than anything that's not a representative of the whole fan base. That I honestly, the first thing I saw of it was back in 2020 during the COVID lockdown when we were linked and it was rumored that the deal was going to happen and that we were going to be taken over by PIF.
Wait, there's a tweet here. It says Newcastle, Mbappe has got to have. We got to get Mbappe, Messi, and Neymar, and that is from @Dave's2010.
I was going to say, where's he found that?
Get lost. No chance.
I swear, I saw you on the Bobby Robson statue letting off flares, chanting Mbappe.
There is no way. There is no way. That's a lie. That's a lie. If anyone watches Love Island, you're a liar. You're a liar, and there was no way that I would ever say that. It's not going to happen. It was actually, look, we know what we think of this newspaper. It was actually the Sun that came out with that star-studded 11 with regards to who were going to sign Mbappe, Bale, Coutinho, all the rest of it. They had a whole 11 mapped out for us that we were going to sign, and the media have ran with that for the last 2 years in terms of we're going to sign these star-studded players. At no point did Newcastle United fans think that we were going to sign those players, nor did we want to. We've been linked with Gareth Bale. We've been linked with a number of those high-profile players, Isco, for example, like we've been linked with. And Newcastle players have said that is not the type of player we're looking at. We want a player that's going to grow and build with the team, which is why we were so happy that Sven Botman signed with the club, because we want a team that's going to grow and build and develop. But look, from your perspective, obviously, Rich, from your perspective, what are your thoughts about Newcastle this season?
I think you could. I think that 6 out of 10 probably sums it up. I think there's probably the signings that you've made a good solid signings and what you needed. But I think you'd probably be a little bit frustrated in, some of the names that have been mentioned across the whole of pre-season that you haven't been able to maybe get one or two more over the line earlier. I do think getting rid of some of the likes of Dwight Gale, Kieran Clark, Jeff Hendrick, one or two others is massive on the wage bill, because some of them were earning some big money on big contracts. So I think even though they've gone for not value in terms of the wage bill, they've probably freed up funds for you guys to use on one or two other bigger name players. But yeah, I think you'll have a good season. I live in Newcastle as a Villa fan, so I always worry about Villa when they play Newcastle. And I hate playing them at St James's Park because we never win. And it's all for you guys. I think it's all about creating that home atmosphere and that atmosphere at home and keeping that going, because you had some real momentum from last season with what that Eddie Howe created. So if you guys can keep that up, pick up some results away from home, I think a good top 10 finish should be certainly realistic. Again, I agree with the two Dans. I don't think you're quite ready, and this is the same probably for my club as well. Don't think you're quite ready for the top 6. We don't realise how many players or how good you've got to be to get into that. How many goals you've got to score. Like we said, if Wilson gets injured, who's going to score those goals for you to get you into the top 6? So I think a good top 10 finish should be real good progress, and then move on from there.
I would say Newcastle are probably the team I'm most worried about. Aside from Wolves, even though Wolves' business hasn't been great, their starting 11 and their manager's quite good. But with Newcastle, you've done some really strong business in January, which helped carry your form towards the end of the season. Transformed Joe Linton, which almost was like a new signing, that guy, from what he was before and what he ended up. He was unreal. And there's some good quality players there already, the St. Maxims and stuff like that. Now, I think a lot of people was expecting Newcastle to just go crazy in the transfer window and splash the big money, and especially from some of the noises your fans have been making. I think some of you were. But, you've made some good signings, some sensible signings, and I imagine you will make more. And I actually like the way that you're going about it by not going crazy spending money. You're not doing an Everton, you're not doing an Aston Villa, and just signing the attractive names, the fashionable names that, to come in and bring a bit of name value to the club. You're going about it a bit more cautiously. You're not trying to get dragged into, here's the Newcastle price, which is what I've said before. When Newcastle come, you got to charge a special price because you got the money. But the way that you're not just going and running around like headless chickens to every club trying to sign their best players, and going with that cautiousness does make me feel like you're not going to get drawn into that as much. So I imagine you will start to make a few more quality signings. Nothing that's going to make people feel like, oh my God, top 4 is happening. But they're going to be quality signings that improve you gradually. And I can see you finishing 8th this season. I really can. Honestly, I think that's where I don't see you breaking that this season. But I think we'll be looking over our shoulder at you and thinking, geez, because I just think what Eddie Howe has done and how that team's come together, I think there's a lot going for you. But yeah, definitely striker. The problem is the striker market right now is tough. We managed to sign Skamaka. If we didn't get him, I don't know what we would have done personally, because it's hard. And I can imagine you will probably sign an attacker and maybe play him up front, someone there like an Emmanuel Dennis, and maybe put him up front if need be. And that's going to be the situation you're in. But if they do a job, that's fine.
That's the attraction with Cornet, Dan. That's the attraction with Cornet. That's why.
Cornet as well. Yeah, because with Bowen was that role. If Antonio wasn't available, we played Bowen up front, which wasn't ideal, but it done the job and it stopped it being a disaster. So if you get someone who can play on the wing or in midfield, and then Wilson inevitably gets injured, you have someone there that can do a good job, maybe better than Chris Wood. Chris Wood is that guy that you probably want to bring on last 10 minutes. Legs are tired, and that sort of impacts up, which he's lethally effective at that against West Ham, honestly. So yeah, I think.
Sorry to jump in a second, because I obviously didn't get a chance to talk about Maxwell Cornet earlier. Obviously, it was only one game. He didn't play against us at Turf Moor. I think he was injured, but he was the worst footballer I saw in the flesh last season in the Premier League, and I saw Grant Hanley play.
We know about Grant Hanley.
Yeah.
Maxwell Cornet at Molineux was the worst footballer I saw all season. He looked like he was playing with his laces tied. He couldn't string a pass together, and he looked like he was carrying 2 injuries. He was awful. I've never seen a player. Honestly, it looked like a competition winner.
I could have said that about our whole 11 when we was at the Molineux last season.
Yeah,
it was fucking terrible.
Yeah. I'll let you off because it was the Europa weekend, wasn't it?
The one thing I'll say about Maxwell Cornet is that that's the one thing that's a question mark with him, is because he's had a fair few injuries. He's had a lot of international duties, but obviously with the African Cup of Nations and various other things, but he's had a number of injuries over the course of the season. So it could well be that when he played you guys at Molineux that he was injured at that particular time, because he was the one that was making a massive difference to Burnley. I think he scored 9-10 goals last season off the back of that in a Burnley team that wasn't scoring many goals. I think that was a massive achievement for him, and I just think if he could come into a Newcastle or maybe a West Ham, he could improve them, whether it's starting or from the bench, he could make a difference. So it is one that is interesting, one to keep an eye on. I still think with Newcastle, and Dan Lawless, you'll know because you were linked with Brozier for quite a while. So were we, and we still are. And he can play up front. He can play off the wings as well.
That's the one. That's the one. If you get, I really wanted Brozier, but Chelsea.
And this is the thing, and this is what a lot of people have been talking about. A lot of Chelsea fans have been talking about, actually, that if he doesn't feature as much in the first 2 games of the season, or even the first game of the season, if he's not in the squad or if he's not involved, that he might then start pushing for a move, and that's where maybe we can come calling and get him in, maybe on a loan or on a cheap deal, and that's where we can maybe get that striker in that we need, a young striker, only 20 years old, but got lots of potential, scored 9 goals last season. That's a potential for us to really come in and take advantage and kind of exploit the market, because Chelsea obviously are looking at far and wide at other players. So it's an interesting one to keep an eye on. We've obviously been linked with Timo Werner, who's in talks with RB Leipzig, likely to go there, but again, it's another one we've been linked to. It's an interesting situation with Newcastle. We're not done in the market. That's the thing. And obviously, little Dan, yourself, Dan Lawless, Rich, you've talked about, that we're not quite ready to make that jump yet. But the one thing I'll say is that we are definitely not done in the market. We are looking for at least 2 attacking players to really kind of take us forward into the new season. I think if we were to get a Maddison and a Brozier, or a Maddison or a Dennis, or a Maddison and one of the forward striker, I honestly think that we could be in that position where we not necessarily be guaranteed, but we'd certainly be more of a talking position. And like Dan Lawless said, is it one that maybe you guys would be looking over your shoulders at over the course of the season? But I just wanted to end on this point of view with a show. I want to get your opinions around the table of where you think your club is going to finish this season. So, look, Rich, I'll start with you. Where do you think you're going to finish this season for Aston Villa, based on what you've done so far?
I'm gonna say a creditable 9th position and a good cup run.
Okay. Still could get Europe then with a good cup run potentially.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Look, Dan Lawless, what do you think? Do you think you're going to be hitting the heights of 5th, 6th, 7th again this season, or do you think it could be a season where you have a drop off? What do you think?
Well, I've put my neck out on a couple of other shows and said that I think we'll finish above Man United and get 6th place. We don't know what the hell they're going to be, Man United, but I think we're going to do it. I think they could potentially fall apart. And yeah, I think we can cinch that 6 point. Worst place, 7th. It's me being confident.
Interesting. Little Dan, what do you think about Wolves? Your chances and where you're going to finish this season?
I think we're going to finish 9th and have a good cup run. 9th on goal difference.
Yeah. Beat Villa in the semi-final of the FA Cup.
I honestly don't. I'm really pessimistic. I'm a naturally pessimistic Wolves fan. It's just ingrained in me. I've had too many heartaches then celebrations, so I think it'll be mid-table. But hopefully, I mean, we're on a flipping Battleground Europe show. I've got to back us to get in Europe this season, ain't I?
Of course, this is what it's about. Battleground Europe. This is what it's all about. And yeah, you know, you could well get in Europe even if you don't finish in the top echelons of the table. So
bring back the Anglo-Italian Cup.
Yeah.
Love it. And look, Chris, I want to get your thoughts from a Newcastle perspective. What or where do you think Newcastle United are going to finish come the end of the season?
I'm gonna give you a prediction based on the fact I think we're going to get at least 2 more in. So I'm going to say 8th.
8th. Okay. Interesting. I'm maybe going to go one better. I'm going to say we're going to finish 7th.
What about if your tweet comes true, Pete?
What's that? What tweet?
You get
Mbappe,
Mbappe tweet.
Neymar.
Hashtag welcome Mbappe.
Hey, stop making out this is a thing, Rick. This is not true. You know it.
It'll be like Avon, Pete. That's it now.
Dad's threw me under a bus here, and it ain't even true.
Expected Mbappe getting Givosh.
Givosh, oh my God. The less we talk about him, the better. But yeah, there is no way I said anything about Mbappe. I think we're going to finish 7th on the back of what Chris all said. I think if we make those 2 attacking signings, which I believe we will, at least 2 signings before the end of the window, I do think that we've got a chance to push for 7th. And I think it links to what Dan Lawless said in terms of I don't think Man United are going to have a good season this season. I really don't. And I think it could bake away. I actually don't think, and I might be putting my neck out here, I actually don't think Arsenal are going to have a good season either. I don't. I know they've signed well, but I just don't think that they're going to have a great season. And I think over the course of 38 games, it's all right having a good preseason, but I think over the course of 38 games, I don't know whether they're going to maintain what they did last season.
With Europe, they didn't have that last season.
Exactly. And I think that's where some of our 5 clubs could really exploit that.
Yeah.
And
quick to add this before we go is those clubs that had 6 last season are likely to be the most affected by the World Cup than us. And it'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure out of our clubs who's got the most players going away, but I can definitely say out of those clubs, they're going to be most affected by that World Cup. And that could be a chance where we can start to get a bit more fitness, a bit more rejuvenation at that period in the season as it gets to later. So that'll be interesting, especially if they get some key injuries at that World Cup as well.
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's one to keep an eye on. And look, I would love for us all five clubs to get back around the table again around the sort of December, January mark. I know we've talked about it before to assess where our seasons have kind of developed as we go along. So I'm sure we'll get back around the table to have another Battleground Europe chat as we're getting thick into the season. But just to end the show, always give a shout out to the sponsors. I know Simon's been in the chat. Shyburns, www.shyburns.com. Get your latest gear from Shyburns. Massive supporter of mental health, as it says on the t-shirt there. And Simon has done some fantastic things, not just for Loaded Mag NUFC, but just for mental health in general. And we are big advocates of that. So thank you for Simon for all your support for Loaded Mag NUFC and mental health in general. Pins and prints, lots and lots of pins and prints, all your favourites, whether it's a pin or a print of Kieran Trippier, the mixed match of kits that are available, and so many more on there as well. We also have Retro NUFC that are a massive support, and Machine House, who are a huge supporter as well. We will get your images and your gear on away days on this stream as the season progresses. We'll get it transferred over. But massive support from all the sponsors that support Loaded Mag NUFC. We really, really do appreciate it. And look, you guys, Rich, Dan, Little Dan, we and Chris, obviously, that had to leave us a little bit earlier. Massively appreciate your time and effort to come on to talk Battleground Europe. Hilarious at times, some of your opinions and some of your thoughts about other clubs. We'll see how it progresses. 4 days away till the big kickoff. We are looking forward to it. That is for sure. Crystal, obviously, always a pleasure. Never ever a chore with regards to sharing the floor with you and talking all things Newcastle United. It's been a fantastic show. Really, really enjoyed it. Those in the chat, and we've been tracking it as we've been going along. Apologies we didn't get your questions going. Blame Daz. We'll make sure that it's not private next time, and we can get your questions on the screen as we go along. But we are back. We are back for more shows. The Full Loaded Transfer Show is back tomorrow. We are back with away days with Nottingham Forest, Mr. Dior, to talk all things Newcastle and Nottingham Forest in the build-up to a massive first game of the season. But look, until then, you guys take care, and we will speak to you soon. Have a great evening.
Guys.